Jessica, you're on.
Excellent. So I think we do our roll call unless we want to give it a couple minutes.
We can probably get things going. I'll call attendance.
Okay.
So starting in person, Dick.
Here.
Pete.
Here.
Jessica.
Here.
Marla. Kathleen.
Here.
All right, thanks guys.
We have a quorum. Good.
We just have a quorum.
Just
Yeah.
have a-
And then Randy usually does the land acknowledgement and I don't have one printed out, so.
And neither do I, unfortunately. So we've identified that as a future need.
Yes, for sure, but we do acknowledge that we are on the Owaskawab traditional lands, and we can move on. And then,
Go ahead.
Okay, minutes were included with your agenda.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes.
Thank you, Pete.
I'll
Second.
second that.
Thank you. Was that Kathleen? And we'll.
That was me.
Okay. I wasn't looking at the screen. All right. Well,
I did second it.
thanks, Ron.
Sure.
We'll do roll call vote. Dick. Pete.
Yes.
Jessica.
Yes.
Marla.
Yes.
Kathleen.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next item is reviewing the agenda and seeing if anybody has any additions. We've got the review and update of the environmental standards for the natural resource protection and finalizing those recommendations. We have the nomination of the Conservation Commission representative to the Open Space Committee. And then we need to finalize our 2024 meeting dates because, oh my goodness, how did this happen? But we are already talking about 2024. And then thank you, Jamie, so much for putting together a draft of the annual report, which we'll go through to see if folks have any changes there. And then we'll go through our updates. Are there any other items folks would like to add to tonight's agenda? It's pretty full. Yes, Pete.
Not really an addition, but I have some thoughts on the 30 by 30, which is in our report. Just some thoughts on some things we might want to think about this upcoming year.
So do you want to add that to our discussion of the annual report, or?
Yeah, let's just keep it in there.
Okay.
We don't need to formally add anything else.
Okay.
And I wanted to just add an update under updates, just giving you all a quick update on the timeline for the LID ordinance that we talked about a bit over the summer. There's been a little bit of a change in the schedule, and I can get into that in updates, just to let you know.
So I'm going to just assume that the Scarborough Land Trust has public comments that they'd like to share, but I also open to all public comment, but just wanted to open that space for folks at this time.
Not sure I'm supposed to take that.
Well, you're present, so.
Lots of good stuff going on. Yes, I do have just a couple of quick comments. We have I think a really interesting program tomorrow night in the council chambers at 6:30. How the personalities of small mammals shape forest growth. It's from a PhD candidate that has been doing work in this area for some time. And so if you're interested, come join us. It will not, unfortunately, be virtual. It's only in person. I have, I'm going to save this. I think, Jessica, you'll probably hit on this in the Parks and Conservation Land Board, so I don't want to take your thunder away there.
I don't believe it's my thunder. I believe it's your thunder.
Well, it was work of the board, so. We had a very good public event, kind of kicking off the revision, rehabilitation, and redoing of the bird trail at Fuller Farm. It's a great trail. If you get a chance, go out there, check it out. It's vastly improved from what it was. And we're hoping that trail becomes more accessible to more people. And then I'd also like to throw out that the Conservation Commission consider at some point in the future writing a letter to Town Council requesting reauthorization of the land bond. The Parks and Conservation Land Board is doing that now. The land bond at this rate could be used up pretty quickly here in 2024. That's the only dedicated pot of money the town has for the purchase of conservation land or the purchase of conservation easements. Once that's used up, that will definitely put a dent in our work with a dozen projects in the works here. So, I mean, if we want to keep working towards 30/30, there has to be some funding mechanisms to do that. Of course, the land bond is kind of the traditional one. We've had 4 land bonds in Scarborough, all total about $7.5 million through the life of those 4 bonds. Obviously, there's a lot of things competing for funding right now and interest, but I think if we don't at least try to get council aware and have them start talking about it, it's gonna be a difficult road down the future if we have to start from scratch somewhere and try to get them to get this on the ballot, get it in front of voters. So that's my request.
Thank you. I'll add a little bit more in the updates. Or, sorry, Pete?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, it might make sense to just tag on to that, what I was gonna say about the 30/30 thoughts I had. Real quick, just for consideration. I was thinking that we would possibly do a little bit more outreach in a public education campaign in conjunction with the land trust, possibly as it relates to the land bond, and also in support of 30/30. And what I mean by that is there could be something that goes in the leader. I think there already was something in there, but another article in there that basically is a call to property owners, help support, but help support 30/30. Reach out to the land trust, reach out to the Conservation Commission, reach out to the town. You have property and you've already, if I remember, done something about that in the leader not long ago, but it might be another time to do it and link those 2 efforts.
We also just had a workshop for landowners. We do that once a year on what we call conservation options for your property. And we would like to get more attendance. Those are usually pretty low attendance workshops, but if one person latches onto it, that could be significant.
And maybe something like that is what kind of goes in the leader. I think you announced it in the leader, if I remember correctly. I saw
We
that.
try to put stuff in the leader. It's up to them if they print it.
Anyway, a public outreach campaign, a little bit more about 30/30 and then methods to achieve 30/30. Maybe detailing some of the things that Andrew just talked about at the workshop might be interesting to have in there.
I think that's a great idea. I think we've talked a bit, Andrew and I, about in the Parks and Land Conservation Board, generally touting the accomplishments of the land bond. So talking not only, what the town has accomplished through this public funding for land conservation, but also what we need to fulfill our goals. So sort of where we're at and what we need going forward.
That's all.
Any other thoughts while we're on this topic? I know Marla in the education subcommittee has done a lot of outreach and writing for the leader if there's a role you'd see or interest. Not to put you on the spot. You're in the center of my screen.
Okay. Yeah, I think speaking for Rita, and myself, yeah, we'd be interested in writing about this. This is definitely important, and I think, and we might want to work directly with the Scarborough Land Trust, maybe Randy and Jamie. We could get a plan together for next year. We do have a few articles that we've already written. We want to rework them a little bit, but yeah, no, I think that's a great idea, and we're always looking for things to write about, and so I think it sounds great. Love the idea.
And I think we can get our Allison, our communications manager, to support that also and help us get things into the leader.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Just want to be sensitive to the time. Do we want to, and I know we have Autumn, do we want to move on to the update and review of the environmental standards portion of the agenda?
Yeah, we can move on to that.
We're all just looking at each other, sorry.
Jamie, can you put up the?
Yeah, I was just about to share my
Google
screen.
Doc? Yeah, because I threw in a bunch of updates today also.
I got the earlier ones.
Okay. They
And I had
literally
one
like the last
question.
half hour.
Okay, I don't have those.
I finally had a window to revisit it again.
Mess things up.
Hoping.
All right, Zoomers, can you see the document? No? Okay. It's because I screwed
No,
it up.
it was up a minute ago.
Yeah, it's because I moved it so everyone in the room could see it, and it messed up what you guys are seeing. So give me just a second to get my mouse back over here. Oh dear.
We can see it.
Perfect. Over here. All right, I will go up to the top, and Autumn, you can take it away. Is this the most recent one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so just rearrange this a bit. I think Pete had comments about some ordering and some extra things. I'm scrolling.
I know.
I know. And I'm
Do you
like,
wanna-
it's not working.
Do you want to draw?
No, you're
I was
totally
doing the same
fine.
thing.
That's really funny. So I think I'm just going through, and if you guys, we'll just go through it pretty quickly, and then it looks like Pete has added some other comments that we can talk about, and if you're good with it, we'll just continue on. Okay, so just scroll away, Jamie.
All right.
I would guess hold up your hand or shout out loud if something doesn't make sense. I did add a definition for the coastal bluff. Does that definition seem good? And then
Yeah,
I
it's
see, okay,
consistent with what we've had. Yep.
got some changes to coastal wetlands.
So the only reason I'm putting this in here is because DEP, that's DEP's definition of coastal wetlands. And we've been trying to get communities to adopt the use of highest astronomical tide versus highest tide level for each year. So basically, there are tide tables that are put out for each year, and it's the highest tide level for each year. So the tide level changes every single year by a couple inches, which is honestly really silly if you ask me. Highest astronomical tide is the highest predicted tide over a tidal date of epoch, which is a 19-year period roughly. And is going to be stable for a 20 to 25-year period once that number is adopted. And it's going to be a couple inches higher than a highest annual tide, but it creates a stable number that can be used for planning for a quarter of a decade, as opposed to something that changes every year. A couple of communities have gone and adopted highest astronomical tide, including Cape Elizabeth. DEP has not yet done it because of rulemaking, and they don't want to. Once they open up rules, it opens a whole can of worms. So they're very careful in their rulemaking. Land Use Planning Commission has already changed it about 5 years ago, the highest astronomical tide. So we referenced the definition of highest astronomical tide lower. So I thought it made sense for us to just commit to that change here if everybody's comfortable with it. So from a planning standpoint, it creates a stable number for
Sure.
a long period of time as opposed to something that changes every year.
And as a side note, we should probably find where other ordinances reference.
Shoreline zone,
Okay.
Okay.
all around shoreline zone. Chapter 1000 is all about highest annual tide.
Sounds good.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Maggie.
So who designates what the highest astronomical tide is?
So so it's funny, it says based on the NOAA tide tables there. So we do the calculations for DEP for the highest annual tide already. We've created a viewer, and I reference it in my comments, that I think I referenced it in my comments. There's a link in there. Basically, we've defined the spatial extent, the approximate spatial extent of the highest astronomical tide along the entire Maine coastline. And you can go along the line and click on the line, and it brings up the value of the predicted astronomical tide. Again, these are predictions. It's possible that they don't take into account tidal restrictions, but neither do the highest annual tide numbers. So in localized cases, somebody might, who's behind a tidal restriction, it's going to be up to them to determine what the number is there based on, putting out a gauge, based on going out during the highest astronomical tide or close to it and measuring what it is, which is things consultants and applicants already do anyway, because tidal restrictions also impact highest annual tides.
And how often is that done?
How often is what done?
Coming up with the highest astronomical tide.
Well, we've done it once, and we won't be doing it until NOAA changes the tidal datums, which will happen in 2024.
Okay, thank you.
Once they do that, we'll be able to calculate a stable number for, until about 2050.
And just
Is that
for
the beginning of the year or the end of the year, 2024?
My guess is they'll do it in the middle of the year.
Okay.
And for clarity, when Pete says we, he means Maine Geological Survey.
Sorry, yes, I apologize. And when that data comes out, we'll be able to recalculate the highest astronomical tide, and we'll be able to also create a new viewer that has those numbers referenced. And again, the problem is DEP references highest annual tide in their definition of coastal wetland. So this is a step over what the minimum standards DEP has.
Mhm.
So if everybody's okay with that, I just want to make sure everybody understands that.
It's always better to go more strict than DEP, in my opinion, so.
Again, everybody we've talked to is very comfortable using it, but by law, they don't have to.
But our ordinances can be more strict, as long as it's accessible and the data's in there, I don't see a problem with it.
Right.
Okay. More context for minimum vegetative buffers must include native vegetation. Lawn areas are not permitted. Should we?
Yeah, so what I was trying to get at that comment was, so native vegetation, but for what? So if somebody has a native or a buffer adjacent to the Scarborough Marsh, is the native vegetation adjacent to the Scarborough Marsh different than the native vegetation adjacent to a vernal pool
Sure.
or tributary.
So appropriate to the resource
Appropriate
protected?
to the resource
that
being
work?
protected,
Okay.
yeah, something like that.
Okay,
That's what I was getting at.
okay.
And I think Scarborough has a list of native vegetation species, right? that we
It's
maintain?
going through the adoption process.
Okay, and does that cover all the different habitat types or,
It's not broken out by
Mhm.
habitat type.
okay,
No, I don't think we have.
but that's okay because if the language says it's appropriate to the protected resource, they would have to do partially a vegetative survey anyway, right?
Right.
Okay.
Okay, and then I figured out what I read wrong. I did the plus or, so I know I've changed the ones that were, the bottom two, the coastal bluffs, which was actually plus 150 instead of the or. So those issues have been fixed. I did have a question about where it says 50 foot and then restored, and then 35 feet and 15 foot restored and developed areas. And so if we take away the restoration for developed areas, is there still a different vegetative buffer? Is it 35 feet and then 15 feet for developed areas?
Well, the whole concept there was we would be trying to restore things in developed areas. So let's think about it. Somebody has a lot in Pine Point that's on the
Mhm.
marsh. It's
Mhm.
already developed. They have lawn mowed up to their bulkhead, which is there.
Mhm.
Are we really, with this ordinance, trying to establish a 50-foot restored buffer along that? It's impossible.
Right.
So
Do we want to take away marsh migration zone developed?
I was thinking
I think that's where we were going last time. I just kept it in
Right,
so we
and
can
then
continue to have.
in B
conversation.
applicability, I mean, I'm okay if that's what we as a commission want to recommend. I mean, it'd be great to, it's very hard to require restoration of areas that have been developed for decades, right? So, and under B applicability, it says shall apply to all new development requiring site plan or subdivision approval. So if it's already existing development, it wouldn't need it unless they were going to redevelop.
So what if
something.
they were redeveloping it?
Right, so that's where we want to think about whether or not restoration would be required. If they're redeveloping a house greater than 50%, let's say. So they're taking a house, let's think of the case, there's a house on the marsh
Mhm.
in Pine Point, and this is happening all over the place. That gets torn down and completely redeveloped.
Mhm.
Is that the case then where we actually want to require a restored vegetative buffer or to the maximum? 50 feet is going to be a lot on those lots,
Sure.
but do we just say maximum extent practicable and leave it at that?
Yeah.
Or do we
Yes.
want to even try to tackle redevelopment in this language? I don't know the answer to that. So those are the questions I brought up.
Maybe we don't tackle redevelopment in this language, but we tackle it later on with shoreline.
Shoreline zoning.
Yeah. Does that seem reasonable? So it would just be
Because that
this-
will get at the single
that will
family.
get at the single family.
And this would be just for larger site plans or subdivisions.
I think, this is just me talking, I feel like we'll lose a lot of momentum with this if we start
I
talking
agree.
about single family homes. Honestly. Okay, so we'll strike that. So then coastal bluff zone unstable and coastal bluff zone stable. What is the difference between the 35 and the 15 feet and then the 25 feet and the 15?
It was the same thing.
Same thing?
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll just put, so coastal bluff zone, could you be unstable and undeveloped and that would be okay? And then could you be stable and undeveloped?
Yeah, you can be
Okay.
stable and undeveloped. So what we're seeing a lot of cases in other locations, not necessarily here, is somebody has an unstable section of bluff, and this would be mostly along the Nonsuch River,
Okay,
where I'm thinking about this. There are some sections on this other portions of the Scarborough River also. They're coming in, armoring it with riprap,
mm-hmm.
and then saying it's stable. And and therefore they're building much closer to the top of the bluff.
Okay.
So that's something that we kind of want to try to avoid if possible.
So how do we avoid that? And how do we, so,
Well, now, my question was going to be what permits are required for them? I assume it's shoreline zoning to be able to armor that area and then,
Right, and one of the problems is, and I think I brought it up in some of my other language, is if there's a coastal bluff that exists that is not mapped, which is the majority of Scarborough's coastal bluffs,
okay,
that automatically per shoreline zoning makes it considered to be a stable bluff.
Gotcha.
Even if trees are falling off the top and there's clear evidence of instability, which means it has only the minimum setbacks, which is from the highest annual tide.
and who does the mapping?
We.
Come on, Pete, get on it.
Communities can ask us to update their maps.
okay.
Scarborough would be easy to do. That's a nice paddle board up the river and things like that.
I think you were just asked.
Yeah, I know. Like, can that be considered an official request?
Okay. So,
And the, so that's the difference between the unstable and stable bluffs in
Okay.
terms of armoring. And I didn't know if we wanted to get into armoring in this at all.
I mean, I think we want
Yeah,
to avoid armoring as much as possible.
and that's where we're seeing most of the armoring happening along the main coastline right now. It's along bluffs. There's nothing stopping somebody from going in, anybody's ordinances and finding out that it's unstable, armoring it, and then building close to the top, as close as possible to the top of the bluff. And then the other problem I already described is areas that are unmapped. Shoreline zoning says if it's unmapped, it's considered stable.
so this ordinance, I just kind of have to walk myself through it. So if I have an unstable bluff and I have a natural resource setback, where does the line of the bluff? Where does my line start for the measurement?
Highest annual tide if
Okay.
it's stable.
Okay,
If it's unstable currently, it's the top of the bluff.
and this is the highest annual tide plus 150 feet.
Astronomical type.
Highest astronomical tide.
No, that's what our recommendation
That's
is.
the recommendation.
So what we're saying is.
Now it's.
Yeah, what we're saying is go to HAT +4.
Okay,
So right now,
it's hat.
a schematic is,
Do you want me to pull up the,
Yeah, just so I can, if I can.
because you do have the
Is it in here?
schematic in here.
Yeah.
I can look at it, yeah, I'm good. I just need to understand
as
it.
well.
yeah, right now it's highest annual. Yeah, right now it's highest annual tide,
Okay,
okay? is
and
the-
so if I come in and I
So-
armor this, then I can,
Yep,
build it
so right
close.
now, if it's a unstable bluff, the setback is from the top of the bluff,
okay,
okay? But the problem is, we found is, you get 5 geologists
Mhm.
together, they're not gonna agree on where the top of the bluff is.
Okay.
Or they're gonna fight about it, and it's very inconsistent.
okay,
So the concept was, instead of using highest annual tide and top of bluff, always use highest astronomical tide plus sea level rise.
okay,
And that gives you your normal high water line starting point. It moves up the bluff. And then just have a standardized setback from that, instead of saying unstable bluffs is the top of the bluff, stable bluffs is this. So for unstable bluffs, you use this plus a larger number. For stable bluffs, which I have to say, bluffs I've mapped on Chesapeake Island in 2020 are now unstable. And we just remapped them as stable in 2020. These change all the time. So, and then you have a lower setback for stable bluffs, but it's all from the same thing.
okay. So both of these
Oh,
would remain,
thanks.
so both of these would stay in the table, but we would clarify that it's for undeveloped property at this point.
Yes,
Okay, and then the 30, would we keep the 35 feet and the 25 feet then?
I think
And that
so.
would be it, right? Okay, perfect.
And I think there could be some arguments that it should be 25 and 15, but we could go for bigger number.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Yeah.
That helps me.
So, and we chose, in this example, we chose 150 feet for unstable bluffs as opposed to 125. We could consider keeping it consistent of hat plus 125, hat plus 125, and then hat plus 4 plus 125. Does that make sense?
It does, like the others, so it's the same.
Yes.
Is that 25 feet? A huge impact when we're doing it?
No, nobody's done 150 yet.
Okay,
There are, Brunswick has adopted 125.
okay, so they've adopted 125 for unstable, what about
But
stable?
they also have tons of bluffs.
Okay,
Most of their shoreline is bluff.
okay, perfect.
So we'll get rid of any reference to the developed areas.
Yes,
We'll deal with redevelopment in shoreline zone.
yes. Okay. You had another question.
Yeah, I didn't understand where our setbacks or our vegetated buffer starts from. So I understand in a contiguous wetland, it would start from the wetland boundary, probably, as mapped in the field, right?
Mm-hmm.
For a vernal pool, I wasn't sure what was used.
Oh, okay, that's a good point.
I
Where
wasn't
we
sure
would,
what we used for river, stream, or brook either.
the center line? Does it start from the center line or does it from?
It's usually normal high water for, well, at least shoreline
In
zoning.
shoreline zoning, but I don't think we
Okay.
have that
So
defined
let's
in
add
here.
that as a whole section, like where the measurement starts. That's
Yeah, I
great.
think that we'll need to define that
Yeah.
for,
And you can help me with
vernal
that
pools. And-
specific.
And normal high water line would be taken straight from shoreline zoning.
Okay,
And
Just
vernal pool probably has something.
Has something in
shoreline
it?
zoning
Okay.
also, doesn't it?
it might.
I think, I'm not sure. So anyway, I just wanted to make sure that we specify what it's from.
that's great. And that'll work out great for adding diagrams too, so it's really clear. Because it can be really confusing. You know, in the natural resource setback, it's there, here to here, and the vegetative buffer is part of that, and then there's some other language, so I'm struggling with it a little bit, so I want to make sure it's clear.
One of the other questions I had for the group was, do we think our 125-foot setback and 100-foot buffer are big enough for the Scarborough Marsh system? And again, I picked up these numbers and looked at some other literature out there and coming up with those, including some stuff that was done in Southern Maine by the Southern Maine Planning and Development Commission. You have a unique resource, so. I think they're pretty good, but
I was going to ask if, like, Maine Natural Areas Program or Kristen Purrier specifically, since they have mapped marsh migration areas, if you had said last meeting that this looks to capture those kind of critical areas, I think. Is that what you said last?
yeah, the hat plus 4 does. I just didn't know if our vegetated buffer was big enough and our setback was big enough, but I think it does. We should do an analysis, a comparison of the hat plus 4, which is one marsh migration zone, and the hat plus 125, and see how they overlap. Since we have the hat line, that would just be buffering the line by 125 feet and
Mhm.
comparing it with sea level layer that's already in our GIS.
Yep.
So that'd be a pretty easy exercise. That's something that Micah would be able to do.
I'm just making a note of it.
And then we can actually visualize what we're putting on
Right,
paper here. And see if, is the hat plus 4 250 feet inland in all areas, or is it, if it is, in some areas, it's gotta be pretty far.
Mhm.
It's gonna be over 125 feet in some areas. But those are the key areas that are low lying that we want to preserve for marsh migration. So
And where nothing should be happening anyway, because
it's
eventually.
gonna get wet.
Right.
Can you remind me of the time? I mean, I think that it's a very valuable point you just brought up. If Micah could map and we could make that comparison, where are we in the process? And when might, I mean, Micah has a full plate. When might we be able to get additional information?
I can check with him on his schedule to see if he can fit this in over the next, I will say 3 weeks, so that you guys will get it ahead of our next meeting.
Okay.
In worst case, if you can't, let me know.
Okay.
That probably in about the same time frame.
Anything else for this? I can stop sharing so that we can. Oh, go ahead.
This was to clarify for myself, that comment right there. What happens if the setback is 250 feet? Does the buffer still stay 100?
No, I added already, I can't talk. I already added whichever is greater to it, so we'll do
Oh,
the greater. of
Okay,
the two.
wow, okay.
Is that your intention? Don't
I'm
you
just
think?
wondering.
I think so. That's usually what it would be.
Okay.
That's how we usually write them.
Okay, so that would read,
The worst case scenario.
yeah, so if you had
For
plus
the
4, let's say,
developer.
and then the buffer, the vegetated buffer in that area would be 100 feet or what?
So the resource would be at the hat +4, and then the vegetative buffer would be 100 feet in that.
Okay, so it would maintain, I guess the vegetated buffer would be regardless of how big the setback is, vegetated buffer stays the same. That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah,
It's
oh,
like,
yes, yes.
So should the
buffer,
vegetated
the
buffer get wider if the setback gets wider?
It's a good point.
That was the question I kind of had, because it's going to be those areas, those low-lying areas. So think of Hampton Circle again as the example. That's all wooded wetland right now. It's a really, really important buffer. But let's say that that wasn't wetland and that was developable. Would we still want just a 100-foot buffer in an area where the setback would be 350 feet, for instance? To preserve the integrity of the buffer is the question that I was kind of getting at. And I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, so that's a good point. So that
Sure, should
your
it be a
hat
in that
+4
case, should it
number
be a
might
percentage?
change depending on where you are.
Yeah, so your buffer could be,
But more than
Or-
likely, you're going to be developing a 4-acre parcel tops, right? So we're not talking about the whole thing at once. So we're talking about your piece. Just trying to talk it through. So you're gonna come in with your piece that this is affected on. Do you think you don't have that many
Well, and I was
1
gonna
acre,
say.
2-acre parcels that, would the buffer vary that greatly? So,
yeah, I don't
you know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
you're not doing this section and this section over here at the same time. It's development by development. Would have,
Yeah, I'm just thinking of it from the standpoint of, we've identified those zones because the half +4 goes farther in. That's kind of key for marsh migration. Therefore, if we still only require a 100-foot buffer, so there could be 200 feet additional, let's say, of lawn that goes to 100 foot of wooded
Sure.
buffer. Is that what we really want for the key marsh migration areas in terms of buffers? That's the thought I was having about that. So in those cases, should it be a certain percentage, for instance?
What is 100-foot typically a percentage wise of hat +4? You know, that's what I'd have to see what Micah comes up with, like what
Yeah.
that looks like to see.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because that would be the best way to do it.
Well, and then I was going to suggest that perhaps we look at the permitted activities and see, like you said, Pete, it could just be, you know, a big lawn, which isn't ideal, but there shouldn't be really any, or structures and other disturbance, even within the setback, is largely minimized.
Okay.
at least,
So yeah, look at the last column. So this is the natural resource setback area outside of the vegetative buffer. So the vegetative buffer is really limited, and then this is
Right.
that space in between.
Right.
And so let's see if there's anything concerning in here. So you can do fertilizer that's permitted. There's a note that they must be low phosphate, slow release fertilizer. Allow for revegetation of buffers using native plants. And there's forestry, invasive species control. Outdoor lighting is permitted. Fences are permitted. Stormwater conveyance, so.
So could it be a lawn? And then do we want, in those key areas, do we want people cutting down 20% of the trees every 10 years? In that buffer, oh, wait, that's the.
This is the area
Right,
outside
right,
of the
right,
buffer.
outside of the
Yeah,
buffer,
yeah.
okay. Okay, so yeah, so that takes care of that.
and then Autumn, we should maybe look at the fertilizer that's allowed, because
Okay.
within our coastal areas, it's really nitrogen that is the
Yeah.
the issue, not so much phosphorus, so we should chat about
Okay,
that
okay,
also.
perfect.
So
And then,
I'm
do you
not
want to
sh-
just call out lawn area as a use? I mean, is that sort of manicured lawn area? No.
Yeah,
In the
and
setback
that's-
at
and
all,
that's what I'm
or is
kind of-
that being,
That's what I'm hoping to
unreasonable?
avoid in these areas, because again, when we have the hat +4 extend farther landward than hat +125, we're gonna realize that those are those key areas that we need to preserve the maximum integrity of. So the buffers probably should increase in width in those areas. I don't know if it's been done, I don't know, it's like a rolling buffer almost, like in terms of, it's gonna be 100 feet. But then in those areas, it might bump out more. Because wouldn't we want to preserve those to the maximum extent practicable for marsh migration? Because you think about it, if we set back, that's great, we're protecting the structures for
Mhm.
marsh migration, but we're not protecting the upland, which needs to be in a, what happens when, let's say in 50 years, the sea level in marsh is moving up into the lawn that's there. Can they then protect that? Can they then do something in that area? Or do we want to kind of preserve the integrity of that ecological corridor to the maximum extent possible by allowing that buffer to be wider just in those areas? I don't know the answer to that.
Well, let me ask you it this way. Are there areas that should only have a natural resource setback and you can't do anything in? The marsh migration zone, are those the areas that you're struggling with because you really shouldn't be doing anything in that?
Those
area?
are the areas I'm struggling with.
It's those two that really, if it's a greater number, then I mean, is the entire thing the vegetative buffer? Is there some? This is, and remember, this is applicable for new development requiring site plan or subdivision approval. So you're talking about multifamily development, more
These are
than
big
3 or
ones.
4 single-family lots.
Yeah, so these are big ones.
I feel like
Commercial.
mapping may help us with this,
we need to
because,
figure out where it's actually at
right,
and
and
what
what's
might go in.
existing in there, what does the zoning look like,
Yeah.
what,
I think that would be really good. I think that's gonna help the conversation once it gets to council too, is to say, what is this, where is this, and what does this
Okay.
really mean? But I understand, so I think the mapping will be really good. I agree.
Yeah, it's gonna be key tributaries and key areas around the marsh. Where hat +4 is gonna be bigger than the 125.
Because we're expecting clarity with the mapping, are we able to finalize the recommendations today, or should we postpone that to our next meeting once we are able to visualize the implications of some of these decisions?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, I think we can reach maybe general consensus on everything except for the, kind of the marsh migration areas. And not that we need to like finalize those, but if we can just agree tonight that what's been discussed with the exception of the marsh migration questions and those buffers and setbacks.
I mean, some of these are gonna be like Hampton Circle, that whole area. You're talking, HAB +4 is about 2,800 feet. So you'd have 2,800 feet, and then, again, that's not developable, but then you have a 100-foot buffer around that.
Right. Got it. Yeah.
Yeah, there are some examples where we've got like 1,000 feet of inundation in some of these areas. So we'll want to rethink how we do that after we look at this a little bit better.
And then I think we're also going to have to think about how this is presented to council as well, because that's pretty significant.
Yeah, and I don't think we're in any hurry to push it. We want to make sure it's good,
Right,
and well
yeah.
thought out, and we can answer all the questions.
And yeah, maybe HAB +4, maybe it's HAB +1.5 was what we do, but about that a little bit.
Okay.
As we look at it.
I see Maggie has her hand raised.
Yes, so who are the sectors, I guess, or the stakeholders who would be adverse to some of these changes? Can we predict that, or is there any, I guess in terms of change management, just saying, okay, here it is not necessarily lining up support or even understanding of what we're saying.
So people who are not in favor of this would be developers and then just landowners in general who may find that there are new restrictions on their property that had not been in place when.
But for this, we're just doing new development, right?
Yes.
Did I read that correctly? Okay.
And large scale redevelopment.
I think we take that out. I don't know. I think that we might have to go with new first.
Yeah.
And then.
So
Well,
I
I'm
guess,
thinking like, okay, we'll talk later.
so I guess my question is there any preparatory kinds of conversations that need to happen before we just say, oh, town council, here it is? And I don't know. I mean,
I think you all talked about that when we first introduced the draft, and sort of said, you go forward with what this group recommends. There are developers watching the ordinance draft, so there's definitely already eyes on it. And I mention it every time that I have someone come in for a pre-application with wetlands or stream buffers or RP zones or anything. We're working on these, so need to be aware. But I think you all as a body need to move forward with what you feel comfortable with and understand that at the end of the day, it may get knocked down quite a bit depending on how the map looks and what property is affected.
And I think we've talked about at the beginning, pointing to other communities that have enacted similar or more stringent standards, and then the literature that you were not plucking these numbers out of thin air, that they're very intentional, and the justification is not the word I want to use, but they're intentional with scientific backing behind them.
Yeah, and the number of the HAT +4 relates to the Maine Won't Wait Climate Council report that we should be planning for 1.5 feet of sea level rise by 2050 and 4 feet by the year 2100. So there's scientific fact behind that, that use of that number, but it's eye-opening when you look at HAT +4.
So I think that's some of the preparatory work we need to think about and we need to do. Just that.
and the visuals will really help with that.
Yeah, agreed.
I
We need
agree.
to think as a community, are we planning when we're making these changes for our ordinances just to 2050? Or are we planning just the next 25
20
years
years.
almost? Or are we planning for longer? Do we want these to be in place for longer than that when we're thinking about this? That'll help drive, whether we use the hat plus 4 or the hat plus 1.5.
So our folks, I don't know if we need a formal vote. I'm looking to Jamie for this. But, we are in agreement on the concept with some additional fact finding that we'll look at our next meeting, specifically related to the mapping. Do you want a more concrete conceptual agreement from us, or do you feel comfortable with how the conversation's gone this evening?
No, I think we're good. We can continue next meeting once we have more information to help inform the decision.
Excellent.
A statement like that. This is from Washington.
I think we're ready to move on to the
Okay.
Yeah.
representative to the ad hoc open space committee. I am not prepared for for this.
So the town council did vote to approve the ad hoc open space committee. I don't have a lot of other information other than what Karen kind of spoke about last meeting, where the council will be looking to each of the individual groups who were identified in the committee charge to be nominating their representative to serve on the open space committee. I know Randy has been speaking with members of the committee. I'll just come out and say it because I have the information that Maggie had expressed interest in serving on the committee. And again, this was a number of months ago. So I don't know if Maggie, if you're still interested in being the commission's rep to that committee.
Yes, that would be fine.
Okay. And if others are interested, we can have a discussion, or if everyone is comfortable with Maggie, we can entertain a motion to nominate Maggie to serve in that capacity.
Or there might be others who are more qualified in terms of having a background in this work as well. So I don't know if there are other people who are interested. No,
Anyone?
like this.
Well, I take that as a resounding vote of confidence for you, Maggie. So if we can have a motion just to make it official.
I motion we nominate Maggie.
Second that.
We'll roll call. Let me just write my notes. All right, so we are voting on nominating Maggie as the Conservation Commission's representative to the Open Space Ad Hoc Committee. We'll roll call starting in the room. Dick?
Yes.
Pete?
Yes.
And in Zoom, Jessica?
Yes.
Marla?
Yes.
Kathleen?
Yes.
Maggie? Maggie?
To vote. Oh, okay, yes.
Great, thank you. You were scaring me there for a minute. All right, great.
Thank you, Maggie. Thanks for
Thank
doing
you.
that. Yes. And
See how it goes.
So I will touch base with Randy and Karen about that, and we'll figure out how that whole process is going to work, but your name will be submitted to the town council for representation on that committee.
Did they give you a deadline when they needed that back?
No, of course not.
Okay, I was like, oh no, I'm behind.
No, I think the goal was December.
Okay, good.
I can say that no one's reached out to, I think, a lot of the other.
I haven't reached out to any of my other committees
Yeah.
I mean, the council hasn't reached out
at all.
to some of
Okay.
the other groups that are on there that aren't part of the town.
Yeah, so I think,
Okay.
I have a feeling that's going to fall to
I
staff,
feel
so.
that's, since I'm going to be the staff liaison for that, you'll probably be getting an email from me tomorrow or the next day, Andrew. Sorry, thank you.
Well, this was just last Wednesday, right? Where this is,
I'm not terribly
Uh,
behind it. It was last Wednesday. Because we have two council
Yeah,
meetings.
yeah.
in a
It was
row.
last
Yeah,
Wednesday.
I'm not that late.
Correct. My weeks have all blurred together lately, so. All right, so we can move on to, our 2024 meeting dates. You recall last meeting, we talked about the first Monday. It seemed like there were going to be some conflicts there, so, Autumn kind of re-looked at the planning board schedule and when, we'll get submissions and when information needs to be provided to planning staff so that it can be compiled and given to the planning board ahead of their meetings. So it looks like the fourth Wednesday and the fourth Thursday are also options. So we can chat about the three options that are on the table are the fourth Wednesday, fourth Thursday, and first Monday. And honestly, it looks like the fourth Wednesday or Thursday line up better. We'll have fewer kind of rescheduled meetings and things like that. So, but we obviously need to accommodate everyone else's schedules as well. So does anyone have any strong feelings about either of those dates?
Wednesday is much better for me because I have an ongoing Thursday thing, which suppose I could miss once a month, but I'd rather not.
Mhm.
So, for me, Wednesdays are better.
Any other votes for, oh, Marla, go ahead.
Yeah, so I would prefer Wednesday night or Thursday night because my husband volunteers every Monday night and takes our older son, so I'm not able to go to any meetings in person except for in the summertime. So it's just a preference. I mean, I can definitely still do online meetings on Monday nights, but I think if it was Wednesday night or Thursday, I could go to more in-person meetings.
Thanks, Marla.
I think I prefer Wednesdays over Thursdays. Middle of the week.
As someone that works a 4-day work week, where Thursday is essentially my Friday, I would prefer Wednesday also.
Should have said that at the beginning.
I defer to you all. Any others, Jessica?
Wednesday sounds great.
Kathleen, does that work for you?
Yeah, that works for me as well.
Dick, are you available Wednesday nights? Okay, so I will, I'll also check with, Randy and, Rita to see if the fourth Wednesday will work for them.
And when would this start?
It would
January?
start in January. So we'd have a pretty big stretch between our December meeting and our January meeting.
You all would miss the, our next submittal date is December 18th, and your fourth Wednesday meeting would be December 27th. So I don't think you want to make that meeting.
Yeah, no.
I don't suspect that I'll have a lot of applications come in on December 18th anyway, but we can still send them out. And if there's anything, you could maybe trickle in comments, but I don't think you're going to be missing anything.
Yeah, it's usually a little bit quieter around the holidays.
We're starting our new planning board schedule with that final submittal in December. So the first planning board meeting is January 16th. So you would miss that one. That's it.
So, I should raise my hand here, but
Go ahead.
so would we meet? What day would we meet in December?
We would stick with our regular December meeting date.
Okay, so that'd be December 11th, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, and then the new schedule would start in potentially in January.
Yep, so our January meeting would be the 24th, which I'm often at a conference that, so we'll figure that out. But yeah, it would be the 24th.
I think I fill in for Angela on transportation.
Yeah.
Or she moves that one.
Or we move that one, yeah. So, but we'll figure that out.
Well, thank you everybody for just considering a different night. Appreciate that.
All right, so we'll confirm. Like I said, I need to check with Randy and Rita to make sure that the fourth Wednesday will work for them. But we'll tentatively plan on that for 2024. All right. And we're 2 minutes ahead of schedule now, guys, so we can talk about the annual report submission. So every year, the town puts together an annual report highlighting work done over the previous, it follows the fiscal year. So this would be July 1, 2022 through June 30, 2023. And so draft was in your packet, and I can pull it up on the screen probably if you give me a minute. Let me get my bearings.
Thank you for adding the visuals, Jamie. I think it looks great.
Sure. So let me just get this so that everyone in the room can also see it. So this just kind of follows the template that was used last year. So hitting on the highlights from this past year.
We have the Zoom screen.
The Zoom screen.
Do you want me to share my screen?
No, I can do it. I just
change.
it's just, let's see. What do you see now?
Yep.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you, Jess, for letting me know. So conserving land, really focusing on the work that the commission has done with 30 by 30, including the council workshop, the resolution, the fact that this group advocated for funding in the fiscal year 24 budget for an open space plan, and then updating the conserved lands and open space map that's available on the town's web GIS. Building resiliency, we did the updated plant list, made recommendations for that, and then engaged citizen stewardship. We began the coordination of the speaker series. Technically, the talks didn't happen until our current fiscal year, so we'll highlight that more in the next annual report. Likewise with Sustainable Scarborough Day, and then Marla and Rita have had articles appear in the town newsletter and in the leader, and then just recognizing Randy and Jessica as our chair and vice chair respectively, thanking our members that have moved on over the past year or so, and then our council liaisons as well, recognizing them. And that's what she wrote. And then, Jessica mentioned the visuals. So I pulled some of the images, or just the top part of the 30 by 30 fact sheet that appears on the commission's webpage on the town website, just kind of giving a little bit of an overview of that. And the conserved lands and open space map, which is not great on the screen. And if it's reproduced in black and white, won't be great either. So we might revise how that looks for if they publish it in the town report. I don't think that they print reports anymore. I think they're all just digital. So maybe having a digital version of the map.
And there should be a legend on that.
There sure should. I just pulled a screenshot.
Okay. No, that's fine. That's fine. And if it is going to be in this 2-page format, maybe there's a way to, if there's a way to make it, I don't know, the image a little bit bigger.
Yeah, so this is just to show examples of what we may submit. It is up to the town clerk and our communications manager will do all the formatting and stuff like that. So just because we provide them with the images also doesn't necessarily mean that they will end up putting them in. So, but yeah, I will, when this goes, we'll make sure that map is a little bit cleaner.
More legible.
Yeah.
My only other comment is I would, under the conserving land, I would say that draft a resolution to support conserving a minimum of 30%. And that's one thing that we changed in the language for the actual resolution.
Right. And Marla's hand went down. So Marla's hand went up.
I do have a question. Can you just remind me where this will be published? in what does it go in the town's annual report? Does it get submitted to the town council? I'm just curious where this will end up. I think it's great. I honestly think it's really well written and succinct and really explains well what we've been doing.
Yeah, so it is a report to kind of the town council and the citizens of Scarborough. So it's a compilation from all of the departments and then committees as well, talking about the work that has happened over the past year. Like I said, in the past they've had printed copies. I haven't seen a recent printed copy though. I think the last one I saw was from 2018 or 2019. So I think it might just be a digital report at this point, but the intended audience is town council and citizens of Scarborough.
The town newsletter links to it.
Yeah.
They usually put something in.
Other than that, I like it.
Excellent. So moving on to updates. First update from promoting citizen stewardship.
Yes, thank you, Jessica. So I did submit a report, and we had our third and final conservation speaker, and that was November 2nd, and that was Sally Stockwell from Maine Audubon, and she's the director of conservation. She really is a wealth of knowledge. She's an amazing presenter, and I loved her presentation. Andrew Mackey, who's in our meeting, he introduced Sally, and so I really learned a lot. I would just suggest that anybody who missed it, that you watch it on Scarborough Public Library's YouTube channel. So the other two presentations, as of the time that I wrote this report, were already on their YouTube channel, but this other one will be, I'm sure, it might be now and it could be shortly, but she spoke so well about the importance of our Maine forests, and the diversity that we have here is quite amazing, and how undeveloped most of Maine is now. And I do feel like, because we talked about this during the presentation, that southern Maine is particularly developed, and so we have a lot of challenges here, but we're very lucky that we live in this amazing state. We have a lot of diversity, and so yeah, it's a great speaker series. I hope that we do it again next year, and I would love to have some ideas of folks that you'd like us to invite to be part of the speaker series in 2024. So if you want to do a presentation, or somebody who might be a good fit for us, please let me know. And secondly, it's been fun to sort of track the Conservation Commission topics in the news. And I do think that the Scarborough Leader in particular has an interest in conservation issues, because I do see a lot of articles about that we're interested in. So you can look at that list. And I guess that's all for now. We are working on a few articles that will probably be published over the winter, and we're happy to help with anything like around the public outreach effort around 30 by 30. I think that's a great idea. So I can talk to Rita, and we can work together with Randy and Jamie, and working with Allison as well. So that's the marketing communications manager for the town of Scarborough. So like working with all these folks on the speaker series has really been amazing. Everybody's put a lot of effort in, and I think it went really well this year. Thank you.
Great. So Jamie, I'm going to look at you for town council, or maybe we can skip. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot other than our newly elected counselor will be sworn in this week, and they will be figuring out their council liaisons to committees at the first meeting in December.
Probably in December, yeah. Some of the committees may have meetings and they may wait until January. And then council will work on their council goals as well, so. They had a really busy 2023 for council goals, so there will be new leadership, and so we'll see what we get for 2024.
Could I
Fast
interject for a
approach.
second?
Sure.
Is that right? You know, Don Hamill brought this up at the last council meeting. I think there's still a little confusion about 30/30 in terms of what's the number that we're at, what's the number we have to reach in terms of just, you know, pure acres. What counts, what doesn't, is the marsh in, is it not in? So I think maybe that's something the ad hoc committee could deal with right away, just defining.
Yeah,
you know,
that
some definitions and some stats and get everyone around working on the same
Same
set.
thing.
that is going to be a major first step of the conservation open space plan. Is kind of where are we currently and where do we need to go? That obviously needs to be in there. So yeah, the ad hoc committee will be working on that for sure. Planning board.
So planning board has a meeting next Monday. I think Eric sent you all the attachments for the planning board agenda. Most of the things are things that have been to the planning board already. Aroma Joe's site plan at Bridges Drive, that was probably the one of most interest, I would think, to this group. It's quite a bit of, they're elevating that site quite a bit. They are going to be, I think, about 8 feet above. But it's gonna be a substantial change. We've received a lot of calls also in the last few weeks about Muzzy and Payne Road, the trees that were taken down for the AR apartments. And so if any of you have gotten any of those calls, you can feel free to send them to our office as well. So, I'm sorry.
That's the Mount Such Riverside.
Well, that's
Parking lot.
the parking lot, and then
Yeah.
right down the street is the apartments. So that's what we have going on. Sustainability committee is more of the same from the last couple updates that we've had, working on the commercial property assessed clean energy ordinance to hopefully pass that, have that ordinance in Scarborough so that commercial property owners can benefit from specific financing for energy efficiency projects, and then also working on dedicated funding for sustainability initiatives in Scarborough in general. We have a memo that will be going to the finance committee in December, kind of outlining a funding formula and reasoning behind the proposal. So that will be moving on next month. And then Parks and Conservation Land Board, Jessica and Andrew.
Well, we had a meeting on the 2nd, and Andrew Scott presented on 50 Hanson Road. And I'm pleased to say that the board recommended $210,000 from the Land Conservation Board be allocated for that purchase. And I defer to Andrew for a deeper presentation of this just fantastic property. They showed some photos, and the location and the photos, it's really a gem.
Yeah, it's 18 acres off of Hanson Road on the east side or south side, or however that works there. It has over 1,000 linear feet of Silver Brook bolt banks, so the stream runs through the property. Good mix of habitats. It is considered by IFW a wild brook trout stream. And we know from one of our seasonal employees that there actually is brook trout in Silver Brook. See if I caught some. It's I think the really interesting part of this is this property abuts property we already own called Trapper John. It abuts a homeowners association property, which then abuts Broad-Turn Farm. So this would be part of 700 contiguous acres of property that is in some type of protected status. Now, some of it, including some property above Broad-Turn Farm, is in agricultural easement. So it's not all quote unquote natural space. And then it's not far on the other side, on the town line is a fairly good size piece owned by the town of Saco and Saco Valley Land Trust. It's not directly connected to it, but it is part of a fairly large habitat block that IFW recognizes.
And the next meeting will be on Thursday. And we have also set our 2024 quarterly meetings. The board meets quarterly and as needed. So we anticipate meeting more frequently than quarterly because the Scarborough Land Trust has been working very diligently to find these excellent applications, these excellent properties. So I anticipate that we'll meet more than 4 times, but we have set those dates.
And I did just want to, as I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, give a quick update on the LID ordinance that we talked about probably last, I think in July or August. So if you recall, that ordinance is a requirement of our federal stormwater permit. The Friends of Casco Bay actually appealed the work that Scarborough and the 13 other communities in this region had done on that ordinance. And so it actually just went before the Board of Environmental Protection last week, 2 weeks ago now, actually. And it has been remanded back to the Department of Environmental Protection, back to DEP. So DEP needs to do more work, set the specific performance standards that need to be met, and we will anticipate a change in our time frame for our ordinance because DEP needs to do their work before we can do our work. So our time frame is a bit to be determined at this point. So that is my update on the LID ordinance. And unless there's anything else from the group, our next meeting will be December 11th.
Marla's hand is up, but I'm not sure. Okay, nope.
All right. Well, if there's nothing else, I wish everyone here a happy Thanksgiving, and we'll see.
Motion to adjourn the meeting. How's that?
Perfect.
Second.
Thank you all.
Thanksgiving.
Thanks, all. Happy Thanksgiving.